We're here with David Ehab, Michael Lewis. A lot of basketball conversation happened on the men's basketball side. The season's, a month away from exhibition tipping off, and we're in the thick of the official first week of practice. But Coach Lewis, appreciate you joining David and I. We're just going to talk some hoops.
Let's get it.
All right, so you look at these first couple of days of official practice. You guys had summer workouts. You had all that type of stuff. But how's everything been going the first couple of days?
I've been pretty pleased. I think the guys have some general excitement about the start of official practice. They should be. It's a little different than when I played. You had the old October 15th and, the build up to that Midnight Madness and things. And, it seems like we start earlier and earlier. Like now it's September 22nd and you get to practice 30 of those 42 days prior to your first game. And but we've been together since June. I liked our summer, our fall, and I've been pretty pleased with the first 4 days of practice. I thought our first day was outstanding. Just from an energy level, as you would expect. But I thought, we executed well in our drill situations. We still have to get better at carrying over from drill to live play. Sometimes we lose our minds when we put, time and score on the clock and get up and down, and some of the bad habits come out. But that's part of the process of breaking those old bad habits and creating new ones that we want here. And but we have a pretty good group that has so far been very open to coaching. They work at a level that is acceptable, and they're trying to do what we ask, and that's, at the end of the day, that's really all you can ask from these guys, just to continue to try to build this into a team. I think you guys saw a little bit of practice today. Our communication it dipped a little bit today. It has to be better. When we get in those little ruts, like who's going to be the group of guys that bring us out? Like who's going to be the guys that put their self-interest to the side and do what's best for the team. And we got to grow in that area, but I think we have some guys that have the ability to. I got to help bring that out of some of those guys.
Coach, you got so many new guys, so part of what your responsibilities are bringing them together as a team. You had them together in the summer. Talk a little bit about the process of bringing these guys together as a group.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you probably sacrificed some of the individual development where you spent the off seasons, developing their individual games. I mean, we still spent quite a bit of time on that, but probably not as much as we have in the past, because like you said, you have a group of new guys and trying to get them to gel together. Because you're unfortunately not building programs anymore. You're putting a team together and then you're trying to go compete. And so we started with some of the team stuff a lot earlier. Obviously, it has to take shape on the court. But we did some things off the court, whether it's team barbecues, pool parties. They did some jiu-jitsu. They just did a bunch of things off the court together. Some with us coaches, and then some organized on their own where they can, spend that time. And I think it's a good group from that standpoint. But a lot of teams are. How do you react when you get thrown in the fire and adversity hits? How do you handle that? Who are the leaders that step forward and bring the other guys up? Just the communication, the body language, things like that. So we've been talking a lot about it, showing clips, examples of good and bad. All the things, trying to get it to take hold. And like I said, this is a very willing group, so hopefully, we'll get there in time for the season.
Were you the one out there cooking the barbecue?
I order that stuff in.
Let's wait to see if we got Chef Lewis out here.
Hey, I like to. That is one of my hobbies, barbecue and golf. But, I like watching those guys interact, and they're not very good fishermen, but they had some fun, and I think it's just a different time, I miss spending some of that individual time with individuals in the gym working on their game and seeing them grow over several years. But that's just not how it is now, and so we got to be able to develop teams quickly and get them at a level where they can compete.
Coach, you talk about how it's so different nowadays, and you see a lot of these, especially in the Power Four, where guys are hiring general managers. In this day and age, walk us through navigating the portal, and with such a transition in your roster, how does that take shape? Is it something that you're watching during the season? Just kind of walk us through, with 1,500 guys out there, that whole process of building your roster every year.
Well, I think that's where you got to have a really strong staff. And it's always been the number one duty of any assistant coach on a staff, their ability to recruit. That has changed a little bit is hard because it's really not true recruiting anymore, unless the money's the same, and then maybe the relationship or the recruiting part of it comes into play. But now you've got to be able to have a staff that has a very vast network of connections. So when the season is over and you go back and evaluate your team and what your needs are, guys coming and going from your roster, how do you replace them and what exactly you're looking for? Because if you get out in front of it, then you've got more time to kind of dive into the details. And I think that's what we did a much better job of this year in the portal. But the biggest key for me was we had a much larger pool of players to evaluate and kind of dive into their background and what they're about and how they can impact our program. So I got to give a lot of credit to the guys on my staff for their connections, their willingness to put in the work, and to dive in and get the true details to where we can piece together a team.
You mentioned the staff, and Buzzy Carruthers was somebody's name that popped up a ton with the players that we had on the podcast series this summer. What's Buzzy's involvement to make sure that so many of these guys are committed to coming to Ball State?
Well, Buzzy's just he's got a ton of energy. He's got some charisma to him. He's got a connection with one of the most successful AAU programs in the country, so he's got a vast network there. John Clancy's been a successful head coach in his past at the junior college level. He has connection to a couple guys on our team. Scott Combs, that's kind of what he is. He's a connector of people. And he's been several different places where he's developed, again, a vast network. He's a connector of people. Like the 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. He knows everybody, somehow. And then Justin Brown, coming from Chicago, and then his junior college background and where he's been. We feel like we have the people in place on our staff that have connections to the right people that have their hands on players that can get you in the door. And then, then obviously the conversations start, and then it ends up working its way down to where everything ends up. But you've got to have a large pool of guys because you're not going to, we're not coming in, with the most money, right? We're not coming in with the highest rev share. So you've got to have a vast network of people to find out, where things are working, where they're placed at your level, and then make sure you're trying to get the right guys. Because whether you got the least money or the most money in revenue share, if you don't have the right people, then none of that stuff matters.
Coach, we talked a lot about, portal, transition. If we put you as head of the NCAA and you're a commissioner and you could make one change to everything that's happening right now, what would that be?
I'll make a lot of changes. But with the portal stuff,
anything.
I think the biggest thing, I got no problem with the money. I think football and basketball, those guys should have been, had their hands in some of that stuff. I have no problem with the money. I really don't. I'm for these guys making money, and they should get a piece of it. I don't like the constant transfer, the year to year to year. Now how do you fix that? It's just my personal opinion, and nobody wants to do it. The NCAA doesn't want it. Universities don't want it. Where it's an employee type of agreement, and I think that's the only way you can get around it. Where you can sign them to multi-year contracts. There's buyouts in it, all those things. Like you sign a kid to a 3-year contract, and he wants to leave after 1 year. That's fine, all right. But there's a buyout in place, just like there are in coaches. And I don't know if the true employment's the best way, but I just don't see any other way around it. Because honestly, it is an employment agreement. You guys came to practice today. Well, I told those guys when to be there, right? We had breakfast at 7:45. We had weights at 9. We had practice at 10. That's an employee arrangement. You see what I'm saying? And there's a lot of negative that can come with that, but I think we've got to find some kind of level playing field guidelines to put in place where that's the one thing I don't like about this whole situation is the constant in the portal. And if you sign a guy for 1 year, all right, a 1-year contract, that's all he's interested in, then on the front end, and you can plan accordingly. Because where we are right now, I think is very difficult. For instance, we have several guys on our roster with junior college backgrounds. Okay, 2 of them, this is their 4th year of school. Well, it's the end of September. Do they get a 5th year? Do they not? How we don't know that yet. So how do you plan from a recruiting standpoint? How do you, in your head, Like how do you put your roster together for recruiting in the future? Because these guys, the season's about to start, and they don't even know if they have another year yet. Somebody's got to put the big boy pants on and make some decisions, and then we got to have some guidelines and rules, and then they got to be enforced. But to be able to go into a season and not know that, and then because here's the thing, like we were recruiting a high school guard, and they were asking about what our team's going to look like. I said, listen, man, I can't tell you. I don't know. Like any coach that says this is what my roster look, they're lying because nobody knows. Take for instance the two guys that we have with the JUCO year. Okay, do they get a fifth year? Okay, and if they do get the fifth year, like do they choose to come back to Ball State or do they choose to go somewhere else? Like you don't know, so you can't ever really plan because we don't have those true guidelines. And I don't, I say the employee thing. I don't know if that's the best thing because I think there's a lot of repercussions that come from that can be negative. But right now with how we're operating, I just don't see any other way around it. Because you still have a group of people that decisions are being made without any representation, and that's I don't think that's quite right.
Coach, reflecting back on last year, was there, as you go into this season, was there one area in particular where you say, you know what, we're going to put major emphasis on improving in this particular area? We're going out to get these type of players that would do that. Is there one thing that jumped out at you when you reflected on last year?
Yeah, when I went back and evaluated our season, several things stood out. But one thing that really stood out, I thought we lacked an overall toughness, to be quite honest, and that doesn't. And I didn't do a very good job with that. That stuff doesn't mesh well with me. It's just not how I'm wired. But I felt like our guard play was not good enough. And when you broke down lineups of the teams in our league and then the production, we were outside of Fat Hill. We were at the bottom end. We were, I think, out of the other, 3 other perimeter positions in production, we were, 8, 9 or lower. And in some cases like 11, 12. And I didn't think our perimeter play was strong enough. And so I think you saw some of that in recruiting. We got Caden Fish early, so we felt like, okay, here's a big body post player that can play inside and out. We didn't get the ultimate rim protector, the long, rangy rim running rim protector, but we had some guys that we went down the line with. It just didn't fall our way for different reasons. And I didn't want to settle for somebody that I didn't feel like was good enough that could make an impact on our program.
With all these different guard type players that you brought in this year, how do you feel like that's going to help with the 3 defense type of teams that are out there right now?
Well, you better be able to guard the basketball, which I think we can do better. You better be able to pressure the ball a little bit better because you're not going to have that size behind it to protect you. So you've got to be able to do a good job there. The one thing where Cam Denson, who's the transfer from Long Beach State, like he's been out for about a month. And so as we're getting more into some of this team stuff, like how does he fit? Because he's got a lot of versatility. At 6'8", he can play inside and out. So he's kind of the X factor right now. Like where does he fit with these other guys? Because he can provide some length and athleticism, both on the interior and on the perimeter. So, but it comes down to being able to score the basketball. Can you take good shots, quality shots, and then you got to be able to be, solid defensively. And that's one area that quite honestly, the 3 years that I've been the head coach here, I've been really disappointed in our ability overall defensively. I thought that first year, if we could have got those guys to buy in, they bought into a lot of things. So it's not a knock on it. They made a lot of changes and bought into a lot of things. That's why they had success, but just couldn't get them over the hump defensively. Because I felt like if we could been a top-end defensive team, we could have had a chance to win the league. And we just couldn't get over the hump in that standpoint. And then the last 2 years, our defense has been really, really poor.
You talk about the discipline side of things. Devin Barnes comes from a military family, the discipline. How do you see that come out from his game?
Yeah, he's just moved around with his dad. He sees how his dad operates. I think across the board, our guys can get more discipline. Like what do you want to get out of it? And then what are you willing to put into it? And you can't, even when you transfer, like when you're transferring, you're normally looking for something else. Okay. Well, you're not going to just find it. Like programs aren't going to change to your liking. Like you don't just, and I think that's hard for some of these guys. Like they're searching for something different, but like if you want different results, what are you willing to sacrifice? You got to be willing to do something different. You don't just get to keep hopping around, because no college basketball program that has any type of success, hey, come to us, we're going to change our whole program to fit you, And so I think getting those guys to understand that, accept that, and then if you want different results, you got to have different actions. And getting those guys to buy into that. And like I said, we got a good group, and they're understanding. It's not going to happen overnight, but so far these guys have been willing to work and been very coachable.
Right, because you're putting together a lot of different pieces from a lot of different schools, whether that's Division I experience, JUCO experience. There's lots of different ways that all these players have learned college basketball.
Mm-hmm. No, and you ask the questions, and like, well, I want to play my game, and I want more freedom, and I want to well, what about the other 4 guys, right? Because the other 7 guys that are coming in on the recruiting process, they're saying the same things, and so getting those guys to actually come together and realizing, what it takes to win and be successful. And you can't shortcut success. Like, we all know what that takes. I've been very fortunate to be a part of that in a lot of instances, and there's been times where you've failed. When you look back and evaluate, the same characteristics pop up in the teams that I was been a part of that were not as good, and the teams that I was a part of that were successful. So you try to bring out those characteristics.
Coach, looking at the schedule, I've heard mid-major programs talk about it's more and more difficult putting schedules together. Truth to that, and tell us a little bit why.
Well, it's not as easy as just calling somebody up and scheduling a game. The date's got to work, home, away. Like, our schedule, I think this year is good, but it's not great for us. We only have 14 home games. We're on the road 17 times. That's not a conducive schedule for building a program. I think our league needs to do a better job of mandating. We keep talking about raising the level of basketball in the MAC. Well, you've just seen it dip for a lot of years. And so, how do you change that? Well, I think there's too much discrepancy in how the top of our league operates and how the bottom of our league operates. For instance, I think there's teams at the bottom of the league that have to go get bought, 3-4 times. They got to bring in X amount of dollars, okay? There's teams that have at the top of our league that are buying games, so you're getting home games. In college basketball, the home team wins 66% of the time, okay? From the buy game standpoint, we're right, I don't have to go get any money, all right, but I don't have any money to buy opponents, and that's how you get stuck in a year like this year where you only have 14 home games. So we have to do it through home and homes, so we started a home and home with South Dakota State. Now, it's probably not real smart. That's one of the top mid-major programs in the country year in and year out. We were able to get a series with Campbell, but we got to start on the road. I like the Indiana State series. I like the Evansville series. I'd like to start a few more series with teams more regional, but there's got to be a willingness to play each other, and we've struggled in that. Or when there's been hey, we'd like to play, but then the dates don't work. Our open date is during their conference games are starting, in December and different things. But so we're trying to move into a situation where we get a more balanced schedule. I think it would help the next season. The NCAA is going to 32 games. Okay, hopefully our league will go to at least 20 conference games where you don't have as much unbalance in your schedule in the league, where you're only playing 2 teams one time instead of, I think now it's 4 or 5 because we got an odd number. There's even an option to go full round robin of 22, which I wouldn't be against. But then it cuts down on some of your flexibility in your non-conference. So it's just really difficult to schedule non-conference games because your Power 4 dictates everything. Okay, so they've got their 20, 22 league games in these mega conferences. They've got an MTE. They've got a couple other high-profile events, and so now they only have 3 or 4 games to schedule. Well, they're not when they're going to schedule those, they're going to go get the bottom. They're not going to, scoop up the mid-majors, and then us mid-majors have to be willing to play each other, especially us regionally. It makes more sense. And saves money to universities. We've had the series with Evansville, and it had taken a break, and I think we were able to re-engage it, and we just signed a 4-year deal with them. As long as I'm the coach and David Ragland's the coach, that'll continue. Same thing with Indiana State. I think it just makes sense. I think we're in year two or three of a 4 or 5 year deal there because we had the neutral game we added.
That's right. Yeah.
In Indianapolis, and so as long as Matthew's the coach and I'm the coach, we're going to play each other. I would like to have some more regional opponents, but there's got to be, a mutual interest to play. And I don't want to have the same teams over and over, but like the Indiana schools, like absolutely, like it makes sense. Like, like our fans recognize when Indiana State comes to town. Like like their fans recognize Ball State. Same thing with Evansville. If we were able to get something going with IU Indy or Fort Wayne or USI or Valparaiso, these teams, Butler would have to be a bye game now. They're not going to do home and homes. And that's what people don't understand. It's just the days of those schools coming up here to Muncie just not happening unless somebody owes you a favor. But I'm excited about our schedule. Like we're going to go travel to Wisconsin, so we're going to get that taste. The MTE. We're trying to help our athletic department. Like everybody knows, the budgets are getting strained here at the universities, and Ball State's the same. We've seen some cuts, so we're trying to do our part there. And so instead of going to Florida and paying an entry fee to get into an MTE, we're going to Eastern Pennsylvania to Lafayette. Where we're getting a little bit, and we're going to play 3 games there. So the competition is not going to be any different there than it would be in Florida or somewhere else. It's just a different location, and the sun's probably not going to shine. But that turkey's going to say this. The turkey's going to taste the same, and the inside of that hotel room is not going to look much different for me.
You're right. The turkey will taste the same because it is
Yeah.
Thanksgiving week with that tournament.
Yeah.
But the outside of the hotel room will definitely
it's gonna
look
be-
different for Mick and I.
Yeah, I know you guys weren't real pleased when you saw that come across, but your guys' interests weren't really at the top of my list when I was deciding.
They didn't ask the
Fair
former
enough.
basketball player.
But I think that there's a lot of things about college basketball that I think the general public has no idea about, and I think scheduling is right near the top. It's very difficult for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the dates lining up is a huge piece of the puzzle.
Well, I'm, for instance, Evansville. Like it took us some time to schedule the Evansville game on a certain date because I'm playing we're playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Pennsylvania. Okay, now they wanted to play on Tuesday of the following week. Well, I'm not getting back at 1 a.m. on Sunday and then jumping on a bus Monday to go play Evansville on Tuesday. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, I would have preferred Thursday. They had somebody coming in on Saturday. Like they already had a game scheduled on that following Saturday. So like we were able to come to agreement on a Wednesday, right? And so there's just like things like that. But you gotta, some people just aren't willing to work with you or make changes and whatnot, or you've got something set now. Some Power 4 comes in and throws a bunch of money at somebody. Like, well, I got to take that. We got to move this game to some other day because I got to play Purdue on this date for $100,000, like whatever it is. So there's just a lot of moving pieces. But I'm happy. Other than the amount of times we're on the road, our schedule is what it is. When you get to conference play, I do know this. There's 9 of those things on the road. There's 9 of them at home. Let's go play.
Yeah. You're now into year 4 as the head coach of Ball State men's basketball. As a head coach, what are you learning as the leader of a program now that you've been the head coach for 3 years?
Well, I think for me, and a lot of the people that I've worked for, other than being with Mick on the front end and coming into UCLA and seeing how he did that, those other guys were at their school for a while. They had the run of their program. I think the thing that I've learned the most is focus your energy and your time on what you can control. I think any successful program, you have to have unbelievable alignment. Everybody's got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction. But I can't spend a bunch of time worrying about things that I can't control. My responsibility is these 15 players, my staff, and how we approach every day to prepare ourselves the best possible way we can to put a competitive product on the floor. Like, whether lights out in the locker room or this or whatever problems we're having, like I got to let some of that that stuff go. Even though it all matters, I think it all plays into a part of having and running a successful program. The things that I can't control on a daily basis, I've got to let go, and I've got to let other people handle those things, whether it's to my liking and standard or not. And I think that's an area that I've tried to grow in. I think I have, but it's a daily challenge with me because of how I'm wired and how competitive I am. But I got to put my entire focus on our 15 guys and how we're approaching each day.
You mentioned the 15 guys. You've got a returning pool of players. How have you seen the returners help make sure that everybody's on the same page with what you guys want to do, and then the development of those returning players?
Yeah, I mean they've done a good job. I think they understand what our program, what we're trying to get out of our program. How we kind of do the things day to day. But you do have an influx of new players and new talent. And I think the guys that we've brought in, they enjoy basketball. They enjoy getting in the gym, and just trying to get the returning guys just kind of setting a foundation for how we like to go about our business every day, and what those expectations are. And I think they've done a good job with that.
Coach, a lot of times in the off season, coaches, whether you have mentors, I know some guys will go visit with NBA teams, what have you. Is there anything for you and your staff in the off season that you do, or people that you talk to maybe look at different things?
I spent a lot of time this spring talking with Brad Stevens and Chad Buchanan. Brad's obviously the president of the Celtics, Chad's the general manager of the Pacers, on how they construct rosters at their level, because that's what it is now, right? And so, how do you go about spending, and what is most important, and what do you think is best, for our level? And obviously the money's vastly different, but just being with the construction of a roster, and how they go about doing it. I had several conversations with those guys. Obviously, I've got a tight network of guys that I've worked for that I bounce different ideas off. Study a lot of European stuff, some of the FIBA championships that took place this summer, obviously the NBA playoffs. It was great watching the Pacers have that run, because I love how they play, and what they've done with their organization. And then I'll visit a training camp here next week, and can kind of pick up some different things. But spend a lot of time just going back through our program, the things that I think that we need, the things that we can do better, things I want to do differently with this particular group, because each team's different, especially at this level. But probably the biggest impact was just the conversations with those guys as far as in the spring signing period on roster construction.
And both of those guys, I mean, they've done an incredible job building rosters. Is there anything that jumped out at you that really resonated that you heard?
No, get good players.
Not the X's and O's, the Jimmys and Joes.
Yeah, hey, but good players make things a lot easier. But it really just because they're two franchises that were kind of in different positions. Obviously the Celtics had won a championship, had some higher end guys that they had to keep, and then they had to move some pieces around to fit the cap. Especially now with Tatum hurt, they don't want to pay that tax. So how did they do that? How they still envision them being successful? And then the Pacers, kind of building ground up, where now their higher end guys, are getting the majority of the money, the Tyrese, Pascal, and then these other guys that are having good years, they're not there yet because of the contracts that they're in, which it's all relative. It's very different, but you can study those things and have those conversations on what they feel like is important as far as constructing roster. But at the end of the day, both it comes down to what you said, the Jimmys and the Joes. You better have some fellas. Those guys, when you have the fellas, they have to perform. There has to be a responsibility and accountability for those guys to go out and perform. Tyrese Halliburton can't make $60 million a year and go perform like a guy that should be making 10, right? And so you've got to be able to, when we were putting this team together, trying to fit the needs that I felt like we needed, particularly in the perimeter. and get those pieces to fit together and fall in line and try to put the best possible roster we could together with what we have.
You talk about putting the roster together, and one of the things, you track in practice every statistic, every made, missed shot, turnovers, 3-point shooting, and watching practice today and talking to you, it seems like that's an aspect early on, at least, that you feel pretty good about?
Well, for the first 3 days of practice, I did. I didn't feel great about it today, and I knew it was going to come down because we didn't shoot it particularly great over the summer. So I was kind of in the early fall we didn't shoot it great. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised with that part of our game developing. We have a couple guys that are shooting at a high level. We have some guys that have to shoot it better, but those numbers, they're going to find its level. Water always finds its level, and they came down a little bit today. But, I think guys like Jawan Max are shooting it really, really well. Let's hope he keeps it up. He can change a game in a couple possessions. You guys saw that today in the little 4-minute scrimmage, down 8, and then all of a sudden we're up 1. Right? The flip side is when you're playing against yourself, what's that other team doing that they're letting that guy loose? Joey Hart's shooting it at a high level. Devin Barnes is able to make shots. We need to continue to have guys be able to stretch the floor, because when they do that, I think it opens up and some opportunities to drive with some of the athleticism that we have on the perimeter. So that part's been good. I think our ball handling, our passing has been better. Our turnovers, the first 2 days of practice, we were good. Yesterday, we threw it all over the gym. Today, we got it back under control. So just kind of monitoring that. But we have, I think Davion Hill in 4 practices is rolling about 3.5 assists to a turnover, and that's not his primary responsibility. So, and he couldn't have done that in the summer when he got here. So that's growth in production. And we got to rebound the ball better. Like Zane Dowdy's, he's one of the biggest guys on the team. He can't be last in rebounding. He's got to be able to rebound the ball better. His energy and chasing balls down on the glass has to be better. That's how he can impact games, right? You got to understand who you are as a player, how you can impact winning, and then go do that job. And so Zane can get better in that area. I think Preston Copeland's a guy that can continue to rebound better, because I think he has the physical ability to rebound outside his area. You gotta give guys. Here's what we need from you for us to be successful. Here's the 2 or 3 things. It's not a laundry list, but here's 2 or 3 things that for us to be the best version of ourselves, we need you to do. And then those guys got to go out and do your job.
You mentioned Davion Hill's 3.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio
for right now.
but you said he wouldn't have been able to do that a couple months ago. What has he done to make sure he's tightening some of those things up and being somebody that you can trust in those situations?
Yeah, he's understanding when to attack and when not, right? And when we first got this group together, everybody's trying to show what they can do or prove different things they can do on the court, and we had a lot of guys just catching it and putting their head down trying to drive, right? And just understanding when to attack, when not. Playing more on balance, playing more off 2 feet, decision making. We spend a lot of time in creating drills where they're forced to make decisions, because these guys, they're always in the gym, right? They're always doing individual workouts, and they always have a workout guy, right? Well, they're designing all these drills. It's just for you. So you're just coming off a cone shooting, you're just coming off a cone throwing a over the top pass and running out getting a shot. You're never in a situation to make decisions. I think with all this stuff that's going on in basketball now, our skill level, these guys' skill level may be as high as it's ever been, right? Some of the things that are lacking is the decision making, right? Because when you're working out against that cone doesn't move. That cone doesn't have any hands. Those arms aren't moving. So we spent a lot of time putting guys in situations where they got to read defenses, make decisions quicker, and I think that's where Davion has made a lot of improvement.
You mentioned it. You kind of switched something up in a practice too to make sure that they are able to do that in real time.
Yeah, we've tried to at least once a day at least change how our practice plan is constructed, so you throw them off rhythm. We'll do something every day to put them in a very adverse situation to see how they handle it. Sometimes we've handled it well, sometimes we haven't. Today, didn't start off well, but they were able to self-correct. I don't know if they would have had the ability to do that a month ago. All right, so you're seeing some growth and some improvement, but you got to continue to put them in those difficult situations. But because most teams, when the shots are going and everybody's hooting and hollering, it's easy. You got a bunch of front runners, right? All right, well, who's going to be the core group of guys that when things go bad, because it's going to go bad in every game, all right, can pull yourself together, get the group of guys together, to do the tough things, to overcome the adversity, and try to continue to go on and compete and ultimately win. So we try to put our guys in those type of situations and set them up. It sounds bad, set them up a little bit to fail, to see how they can react and self-correct and get themselves out of it.
It's all about adjustments.
Yeah, and we've got and you're also trying to then you go back and you evaluate it. You talk to individuals about their body language, their talk, like in that situation, what did you do to help so and so, right? Like, what are you doing? Like, no, you're just worried because you made a mistake. It's not about you. It's about our team, right? You have experience. This guy does not. How can you help him grow from that? And we've got a group of guys that I think have leadership abilities, have the characteristics that I've seen in good leaders before. But to their own admission, I've never been asked to do this before. So I have to. I have to teach them. I have to help them. And so I have to empower them, and then I got to have their back when they do those things.
Coach, looking back at last year, one of the things that jumped out to me was the differential in turnovers. It wasn't that you got turned it over a ton, but didn't force a lot of turnovers. It was very evident in practice today. You've got speed and aggressiveness on the perimeter. Will that change your defensive philosophy now that you got guys that can maybe guard a little bit better?
I hope so. Like you said, we didn't turn it over a ton, but we didn't create any. And I think with this particular group, with a lack of interior size, so to speak, we've got to be able to get more deflections that will lead to turnovers, and then more importantly, like we've got to turn those turnovers into points. Like we're not gonna shoot it as well as some of our numbers in practice have been. Like on the nights that the ball's not falling, like today, okay, how do we generate easy baskets? Right, when the offense is difficult, when you're going against a really good defensive team, how else do you generate points? Well, you need some easy baskets, and if you can create 12 to 18 points off turnover, that'd be fantastic. But we weren't in that position last year. We just didn't have that type of pop on the defensive end.
Well, Coach, is there anything else you want Ball State fans to know about where the team is at right now, a month away from exhibition play?
I hope we're, like I told you the other day, I hope we're a lot better a month from now. I hope we're a lot better 3 months from now, and then ultimately you want to put yourself in a position to compete for everything you want at the end of the season. And I think what I've been with this team, I think this is a team that basketball fans in this area of the country can appreciate. And, is it going to be great every night? No. Are we going to do some real bonehead things? Yes. Are we going to win every game? No. But will these guys show up and compete more times than not? I certainly believe that now, and it's my job to get to where we show up every night and we compete every night and just doing the things it takes to win night in and night out, put pressure on the other team, let them make the mistakes, put ourselves in, like we talk every day. Let's put ourselves in a position to win the game at the under 4 timeout, and then let's be more together, tougher, more disciplined than the other guys, and let's go win the game. And I think that's the mentality that these guys can have embraced. Now we just got to be able to put it out there in competition.
We'd had a conversation after all the guys had recorded a podcast episode, and the theme felt like it was everyone here felt like they had the same mindset. They want to do things for Muncie, for Ball State. They want to make everybody on the same page. You and I talked about that, and you had said, it's great to have that right now. Let's see how that works in a month. Let's see how that works in 2 or 3 months. Now that you've seen it for a couple of months, go back to that conversation. How are you seeing that on display now?
No, I think so. But the challenge with every team, not just here at Ball State, is like, all right, when there's a stat sheet, do you still have that mentality? When there's a starting lineup, do you still have that mentality? All right, when mom, dad, uncle, grandma, all that stuff sees minute played and how many shots, like, do you still have that mentality? Like, do you have the discipline it takes to be a true team, or are you going to start getting splintered because things aren't going your way, and they're not going exactly the way you envisioned when you chose to come here? Are you able to remind yourself that you came here to make the sacrifices it took to win, not so much about you, but the team to win. And we got to do a great job as a staff to continue to talk about that every day, and make sure that we squash the behaviors when we see them that are leading away from that. Empower, encourage the behaviors that it takes to be successful and be a team. And I think these guys so far have bought into that, and that's what you need. And I think that was one of the things that the biggest change in what we saw in year one, and why we were able to have some success. We had some guys buy into some of that stuff that it takes to ultimately be successful as a group.
Awesome.
Yeah, Coach, thanks for your time. I'm fired up after watching practice today. It'll be
Let's
here
do this.
before we know it.
Yeah, we're what, a month out from exhibition, and November 3rd is regular season ball.
Yeah, it's coming. It's exciting. I just, like I said, I enjoy, coming to work every day with this group and trying to, sit back and seeing the little growth that these guys are having, both individually and collectively, and trying to bring the most out of them, and trying to teach these guys what winning and losing is all about. And, because at the end of the day, man, it's about their experience. I say it all the time about mine. I love my experience. A lot of us because we had success, but I want these guys to feel about their experience here at Ball State like I had mine, because I think basketball, we talk about it all the time, what basketball can teach you and what it can do for you for life, not just these little 3-4 years, and regardless of how it's looked now and the environment that's so different. But at the core of it, just learning the things it takes to be successful in life, I think basketball can teach you every day.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time. Can't wait for this thing to start.
All right, thank you, man.